Shalom and welcome to Superheroes for the Messianic Lifestyle here on lamnetwork.tv, where we interview people who who have been walking the life of Torah for a while now, to give you hope that you're not alone in your understanding that God still cares about his commandments and still considers them the standard of a holy life. He wants us to live by them through the lens of the finished work of Yeshua the Messiah. My name is Daryl Weinberg of Light to the Nations Messianic Ministries, and I am honored to be your host. And tonight, I'm excited about our guest tonight because these two people actually happen to be friends of mine. And I thought that their testimony would be a powerful witness. And so I'm going to welcome Carl and Leonie Hines. Shalom, folks.
Shalom, shalom.
Well, all the way from Hamilton, Ontario.
Yes.
So we're practically neighbors.
Almost,
Yes.
Almost. Just 45 minutes drive away.
45 minutes. That's a lot closer than a lot of the other people I interview. So how are you folks doing tonight?
We're doing pretty well.
Yeah, we're
Good.
doing good.
Doing pretty well.
You're surviving the heat, okay?
Surviving the heat, yes. It's been a brutal summer. Oh my goodness. Lots of heat waves this summer.
Yes.
And thunderstorm.
I hear there's thunderstorms like all the way across Canada or something like that.
You haven't had any?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We had some good rain. It wasn't a thunderstorm, but
Mhm.
we had some good rain earlier this morning.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we've had some powerful, but like this weather system is going all the way across.
Yeah, so I heard
Mhm.
today that it's all the way over in Alberta.
Yeah. Craziness. So anyway, the purpose of the superheroes for the Messianic lifestyle is to talk about people's walk and how they came to the understanding that they have and how it's changed your lives. I mean, how God brought you here. And I know some of your stories, so I was thinking that we could share that with the folks here, and hopefully they'll be encouraged by the revelation that you've come to. So now, Leonie, you were born in Jamaica, but you've been in
Yes.
Canada for a good portion of your life. How old were you when you came here?
I was very young.
Okay. So,
I've been here most of my life.
okay. And then, Carl, you were born in Toronto, right?
That's correct. Yes,
But you
sir.
lived in Edmonton for a good portion of your life anyway.
That's right. About 12 years and came back here to Toronto again.
Right.
Brampton and now Hamilton.
And Edmonton's right next to Purgatory, I understand.
Yes.
At least some of the winters would tell you that anyway.
I really love the heat. Maybe it's because of my time in Edmonton, but the heat wave that we're having right now, I really enjoy it. No complaints, just enjoying it.
Not me.
Yeah. By the end of the show, Leonie's hair is going to be curly and straight up. I know. I have a wife who does the same thing. We can measure the barometer by the curliness of her hair.
Oh,
All right. So, talk about, how you two grew up, where you met. Let's hear some of your story.
All right. I think Leonie should start since she has been a believer for a longer time. So we'll go further back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I grew up in Jamaica, and I initially was a little Catholic girl. So I went to the masses and everything like that. I went to a Catholic school. I did the rosary, but one good thing about it was that we prayed every day. We prayed many times for the day. We prayed, I think, at least 9 to 12 prayers for the day. So that was good. That was good foundation. But then one day I decided that I didn't want to go to mass anymore. And I told my mom, I don't want to pray to Mary anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It just hit me that I said to my mom, she died and she never came back. and Jesus, he died, but he came back, and that was my little way of reasoning it out with her. At this time, I was about 9 years old, 9, 10 years old.
Hmm.
And I decided I just didn't want to pray to Mary anymore. I had gotten very much fascinated by a church that I would pass to go home. I would pass by this church, and I could hear the children singing, bringing in the sheaves, but I thought they were saying bringing in the sheeps, but I was so drawn by the children singing, and I went over one day and peeked through the window and listened and watched. And then my neighbor saw me. She invited me in, but I ran away. But then she came home and she asked me why I ran away. I said, well, I couldn't let my mom know that I was there, and it was already late. And I normally just walk straight home from mass, but my mom noticed that I was already a few minutes late. But she asked my mom permission to have me visit her church.
Okay.
And that started a different story for me. I started now going to a Church of God church. And then another guy, he moved up the road, and his church was called the Deliverance Center. And he drew a lot of people. He just had a tent and some wooden benches, and the Holy Spirit filled the place. And so I was the first person in my family to step out like this, started going to church on a regular basis. And the entire family came along. My mom, all my siblings, my cousins lived with us because we lived in a 3-bedroom house, and then everybody just lived together. And so we were all going to church, and we all got baptized. And I was the first person to get baptized in this church, and first person to step away from the Catholic faith. And not that my mom wasn't a strict Catholic believer or anything like that, but she was just a believer in Jesus. So, yeah. And that started my journey. When I came here to Canada, I was going to theology school, and I had a friend there. And he said to me one day, I know you're seeking truth. And this was true, because I had been asking the Father all the time I said, I will throw out everything I've learned. I will throw out all the theology. I said, I remember saying, you can rock the boat and you can tip the whole thing over. I'm willing to risk everything to know the truth. And I kept saying that. And I said to a pastor one day, I said to him, something is missing. I don't know what it is, but I said to him, this is like baking a cake, and there's a missing ingredient. And so the cake doesn't quite turn out right. And it's funny that I'd use that type of analogy, because at the time I was working in the bank. I wasn't even a baker at that time. I mean, just a, regular at home, you bake your stuff for your family, but I wasn't doing it as a profession. But that was what I used, the example I used to him. And he said, well, what do you think it is? And I said, I don't know, but something is missing. And he looked at me strange, like, okay, well, when you figure it out, let me know. So when my friend invited me, spoke to me and said that he knew that I was seeking truth, it's almost as though the Father was just speaking through him at that point.
Yep.
And he told me that he was going to a Messianic synagogue. And I said, well, what are they sitting? The women sitting on one side and the men are on the other side. Can the men talk to the woman? I had all these strange questions, and he was laughing, and we were talking, and he gave me the address and the name, and I wrote it down, and I stick it in my purse, my wallet, actually. And it stayed there for a year. And one morning, it was the first Sabbath, and it was in the year of, I think it was 2004. And he woke me up at 5 a.m. in the morning. The Lord woke me at 5 a.m. in the morning. And when he woke me, I immediately knew I should go to this synagogue. I jumped up out of the bed and I ran downstairs to the computer, turn it on. Now, for the first time, looking up the name of the place, for the first time, looking at, the information about this place. And so I had the address. I was a new driver, really fairly new. I didn't like the highway, so I always took the little side roads. But this time I decided I would take the highway. And found my way from Brampton to North York to Melech Israel, Congregation Melech Israel. And when I went there for the first time, You know, they were saying all the prayers in Hebrew, all the songs in Hebrew. And I just thought, what is this? This is so strange and bizarre and just out there. And I'd never experienced anything like this in my life. And why are you wearing these big sheet things on you? These sheet things, because they look like sheets. With the stripes and everything. They just look like sheets from my Caribbean upbringing. And so I just thought, what is this? You know, it was just so bizarre. And no one talked to me. No one said hi. No one said welcome. No one said anything. You know, and when it was all over, I didn't know this oneg they were going to do downstairs. I walked out and I shrugged my shoulder and I said, I don't care. I'm coming back next week. Because I knew he had sent me. And so I really didn't care about what had happened today. I just don't care. I'm coming back next week. Okay. And so I called up my friend and I let him know, hey, I was there and you weren't there. Where were you? And so the rabbi wasn't there that day. So they had someone else filling in. So it was very different feelings for me. But I continued until here I am today. I continued, and lo and behold, even on days when I couldn't go, I had to work, and I would hear these Hebrew prayers and songs in my head. And it was just like I was just literally being pulled, and I just thought, what is this? I just couldn't understand it. I didn't even understand the songs, the understand the meaning in English. Right. So just Hebrew songs are playing in my head when I'm at work, trying to work. And it went from, I used to only work one Saturday a month, but they had a short staff. I started working, oh my gosh, 3 Saturdays a month. And I couldn't get to go out to the service. And I started getting very antsy and very uncomfortable. And I said to the manager, when are you going to get people to start working again? Because, you know, I've been working every Saturday now. And they promised they would get people. They got people. And guess what? I was able to start going again. And I started learning, and I started going on the archive for the church, and started for the Messianic congregation, and started checking out all the previous messages from the rabbi. Started taking notes, and just started learning and growing, and just started soaking up as much as I could. You know, so yeah, and that's how my journey started. And then Carl looked at me one day, and he said, "Well, I don't know what's going on," because we were both going to the same Sunday church. And he was like, I don't know what's going on. And but he came and he visited, and then eventually things changed for him as well. But I'll let him tell you his story.
You didn't leave it there?
Yeah, for now.
That was a condensed version, I think, of that testimony.
A very condensed version. Well, I don't want to take up too much time.
Okay.
I'll let you talk.
My story is I was brought up in a 7-day Adventist home. My parents split up and divorced from when I was about 5 years old. At that time, my mother was kind of ostracized by the church. So she pulled away from the church. She didn't really have anything to do with the church for quite a while. So when we were with our father, there was no TV in the house. You know, we didn't eat anything against Leviticus 11. We kept the biblical diet and went to church on Sabbath. But when we moved out with my mother, everything was changed. We moved more and more to a secular style of living. We weren't going to any church at all. Right. And then we moved out when I was 10 years old. We moved out to Alberta. And my mother had told me the story that she was working for National Black Coalition of Canada or something like that. And they had a meeting with, you know, the community. So one of the people that came to this community or event was a pastor of the local 7-day Adventist church. And he met her and he talked to her. And then he said, well, you know, come back to church and everything like that. So I started going back to church. This time, probably like about maybe 11, 12 years old. And of course, I was like, what is this? What's going on here? I don't want to go to church. My mother was a nurse, a single mother working hard. So sometimes she would get somebody else to bring us to church, or she would drop us off to church and she would go back and rest. And then sometimes she'd go with us. But I really was at a rebellious stage in my life, right? Because my parents splitting up, my not really having a connection with my mom because she's so busy working and then sleeping. So I was really watched a lot of TV, had a lot of friends, started going down the wrong roads. When we were going back to church, I wanted nothing to do with it. I used to, when we would have our Sabbath school, I would go and get my Walkman, and I would go and borrow the keys to the car and sit in the car, or I'd go up behind where they would baptize people up to the steps, and I would sit there and I would listen to listen to my music. And then after service was done, I would come out again, and she'd say, "Hey, Carl, where were you?" And I said, "Oh, you didn't see me. I saw you. I was in the back over there." So that was my thing. Then we got baptized, me and my sister, but we felt really it was because the pastor kind of wanted a notch on his belt, and my mother just wanted to have good Christian kids, you know. So we just felt like we had to do it because we were pressured to do it. So whenever I got the chance to leave the church, I left the church. A couple of things I remember from being at the church is we shared a parking lot with a Sunday church, and we had a Sunday youth group called Pathfinders. So we would see them over there having their church, and then I asked one of the church members, "Why is there a church over there? What's the difference between them and us?" And they said, "Oh, they're not real Christians. They're not going to go to heaven." And I said, "But don't they worship the same Jesus and believe in the same Jesus?" And they said, "Yeah, but they don't keep the Sabbath, and they don't, follow the biblical diet, and so they're not real Christians." I said, "Oh, okay." So I remember another time I went back to visit my father in Toronto. Me and my sister flew on the plane. My sister had told me, "Carl, don't tell Dad what we ate on the plane." Carl, just in his own world and everything. We got there. "Hey, so how did everything go? How was the flight? What did you guys eat?" "Oh, we had this, ham sandwich, this and this and this." And my dad said, "What? If I knew you guys ate pork, I wouldn't even let you eat out of my pots." I said, "Whoa." And then one day he had taken us to church, and we came back, and we and my sister were in the room playing, joking around, laughing and playing. And my dad got angry, and he said, "What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing laughing up inside there? It's a Sabbath. You should be quiet. You should be reading your Bible or something. What are you doing laughing?" So this is the whole, impression that I got of the Sabbath and the law. So, but anyways, God kept on sending people to me everywhere that I was to talk to me about Jesus. At my high school, I remember I was at my workplace one time at a bakery, and a guy came up to the counter and he said, "Hey, have you heard the news?" And I thought he was talking about some earthquake or some kind of natural disaster or some shooting or something. And I said, "No, what happened?" He said, "The Lord Jesus loves you and he wants to be a part of your life." I said, "Come on, man. Leave me alone." So he kept on pursuing me, young, old, all kinds of different people just kept on coming after me. I remember I had a really good talk with one friend at my workplace, a lady. We had gone some kind of conference or something, and she was a believer, and she talked to me, and I asked her questions and spoke to her about it. So that was very helpful. And then I ran across little Miss Leonie at my workplace. Leonie asked me one day, she said, "Carl, you're a nice guy. How come you don't go to church?" And I said, "Church?" I said, "I grew up in the church." I said, "There's a bunch of hypocrites. I don't want nothing to do with them." Yep. So anyway, she had invited me one time to her to a play. She was in a play at church. And then she invited me to Friends Day at church at Queensway Cathedral in Toronto.
Okay.
And from then I started going on a semi-regular basis. So one day they had a altar call and I was convicted. And I don't know what it was that was different about the preaching of the gospel that day. It was probably just the Holy Spirit that convicted me. And I gave my life. And
he's been known to do that before.
Yes. So at that time, when that happened, all of a sudden I had a hunger for everything to do with Jesus. I was watching movies, whereas before I used to watch a lot of secular movies and all that stuff, and I still was watching some secular movies, but I had a hunger for everything to do with Jesus. I would go to the Shoppers Drug Mart and I see a magazine with Jesus, I buy the magazine. I'm reading the magazine. I'm watching movies, books, doing online Bible studies and everything. So anyway, she invited me to La Congregation Melech, and I went there, and it was very strange because I'm here for 1 or 2 years in the Pentecostal church, and again they're doing all this chanting in Hebrew. They had all the kippas on and the talit, the prayer shawl. Prayer shawl. I said, okay, I've kind of heard it. I said, kippa. I never saw this in
the sheets from Jamaica, right?
Yeah. And then they took out the Torah scroll, and they were going up and down. They were kissing it and all this stuff. I said, what is this? So I don't think I went back again for a while, but I really liked the message. And then I started listening to the Bible study, tuning into the Bible study that the rabbi had on Monday. I think it was either Monday or Tuesday.
Yes, Mondays.
So it was really eye-opening for me. And the real turning point, I think, for me was I had an issue with my knee. I used to play a lot of basketball, and I had a pain in my knee that would not go away. And no matter what I did through doctors, surgeons, knee braces, everything, the pain was still there. Yeah. So I saw one time, I sat down one time on the TV, and I'm watching, flipping through the channels, and I see 100 Huntley Street. And basically it was a guy called Jordan Rubin, you've heard of him, that was giving his testimony on there. And he was talking about how he was healthy when he lived with his parents. Then he got sick. And then his father investigated all these different types of healthcare and found somebody that was doing a diet based on the Bible. And from that diet based on the Bible, he was cured of Crohn's disease, IBS, acid reflux, H. pylori. He had 2 pages of different conditions that he was diagnosed with. And Crohn's disease is incurable, and he was cured. So when I was watching, I said, I was very skeptical, but I said, something about this guy, I believe he's speaking the truth. He believes what he's saying. Okay. Then they said, you can get a copy of his book for free. Just send us an email or a letter. Donation? Either a letter or an email. And no donation. You can get one for free. You just pay for shipping. Okay. If you want more than one book, give us a minimum donation of $6 and we'll send you another book. So I paid $10 and I got 2 books. And I said to Leonie, let's go on this diet. And she said, just give me this certain amount of time, Carl, so I can finish up all the goodies in my cabinet, and then we'll do it. And I said, okay. But I started going on the diet right away. And from
Leonie's the practical one.
Yes. From the time that I went on that diet until now, that knee pain never came away.
Amen.
So it's like a revelation the Holy Spirit gave me and said, all these commandments that I gave you, you were brought up to believe that they were for your salvation, but these commandments are for your own good. Right. So it changed the way that I looked at the commandments and made me more open to what I was receiving and hearing at the Messianic synagogue. Yeah, and so here we are today.
Yes, here we are today.
Amen.
Yes.
Okay. And so you said, Leonie, that you were working as a banker.
Yes, I was in the bank.
And so then you changed one letter out of that and became baker.
Baker.
How did that happen? I mean, you used the cake analogy, so maybe you were prophesying. I don't know.
It seems so.
My wife has a story about that. When she was in university, she was walking along the campus, and she saw a squirrel, and it had a bagel in its hand, and it was eating. And then later on, we realized, that was a message from God that she was going to marry someone Jewish.
Oh my goodness, that's
God
too
speaks
funny.
in various ways.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yes. So they laid off a whole lot of people, and I had gone on sick leave, and then eventually they just gave me a package. And so I just got laid off as well. And from there, I decided, because just encouragement from different people saying, why don't you do this, and why don't you do that, and do this and do that. And I went online, I started looking at cake designing and so on, because I'd always just bake, but just yearly I would do my Jamaican rum cake, and then throughout the year I would do little things like a banana bread and so on, not anything too great and amazing, just for the family. But then I was being encouraged now to do cake designing to so that when I make the Jamaican rum cake, I could always decorate them. So I decided at that point, I had no job, and I decided at that point to go and do a course in cake decorating. And yeah, and so I went to a confectionery art college, is what it's called, and became certified. And became certified as a cake designer, and then started learning how to bake a whole bunch of different types of cakes and do all kinds of amazing designs. Yeah.
And I can testify to that, because you put together some pretty impressive, you have a website.
I do have a website, yes.
Yeah, and what is it again?
It's designmeadream.ca, designmeadream.ca.
All right, let's. I'm just going to throw that into the comment section. Designmeadream.ca.
Yeah.
So yeah, people can go look, and I mean, when you've come over for, we've done some of the Moedim together, and you've brought some stuff, and we always look. I really laughed that one time where you asked someone else to bring some sort of dessert, and I said, "Cake lady's asking someone else to bring dessert. What's what's going on here?" But when we do the book launch, I've already told Leonie that she has to bake a cake with a picture of the book, because I saw that book cake that you made, and I was blown away by that. So
okay.
Now,
absolutely.
So one of the things I'm really curious about is that you two have an incredible heart to pray for Israel. You're involved in Prayer Hedgers, which is a 24/7 online prayer group through Zoom. It's hosted out of Trinidad and Tobago. But where did this passion for Israel? I mean, it's one thing to be attracted to the commandments, okay? I mean, a lot of people, they understand whether you come from the SDA church, and there's a lot of SDA people who come into the Messianic movement because it's a good foundation, but then they realize that there are some things that are off. But where did this heart for Israel come from? I'm curious.
I think a lot of that has to do with the Father. I think that's his drawing. Even though when I first started, I don't think I'd really given much thought to Jewish people or to Israel. Okay. It was never something that I was particularly interested in. But once I started going to the Messianic congregation, something was just drawing me. And so even though I kept going back and forth, like I would go to church on Sunday still, and I would make church, I would not give up going to the synagogue on Saturday. And it just kept drawing me. And then even when we decided to get married, our wedding was on a Sunday. We decided that we're not having our wedding on a Saturday, and we started to keep the Shabbat, and the prayers were there, and something kept drawing me. And I remember saying, I looked at Carl one time and I said, you know what? I bet I have Jewish background, because this is just ridiculous. I had developed such a heart for Israel and a love for the people. And I remember going online, looking at what Israel looks like, talking about the Iron Dome and all this different stuff. And then just in recent years, I actually found out that my grandmother and all her ancestors were Jews. Something that was kept from the family, something that my mother never mentioned and my grandmother never mentioned. And
what do you think that is?
Well, partly because they never really they did not keep Judaism. They were in Sunday church, and some were in the Seventh-day Adventist church. So, and when Carl and I went home and he went to meet my grand aunt, and I said to her, I said, is the family Jewish? And she said, yeah. And she flashed her hand, brushed it off, yeah, and just walked away, and then changed the topic completely. And I said to Carl afterwards, I said, did you see that? He said, yep. I said, what was that? What was that? Like, it was the end of the conversation. I couldn't ask her another question. It was over. So I went to my cousin.
Okay.
She's my mom's age. And I said to her, I said, is the family Jewish? And she laughed and she said, yes. And I said, what? She said, yes. And I said, well, why is this a secret? I don't know. We just don't talk about it. I said, how did you find out? She said, my mother told me. So her daughter is standing there. Her daughter is standing. She said, what? What are you talking about?
At this point, you're rocking everybody's world.
The whole thing was just a bizarre joke. She goes, what are you talking about? Grandma never said anything. What are you talking about? She said, yeah, the family's Jewish. We just don't talk about it. Why? No reason. We just don't talk about it. There's no need to talk about it. And that was the end of it. She said her mother told her. I said, when did your mother told you? She said recently, because her mother had only recently died. She said just shortly before she died, she told her that the family's Jewish. She said she just looked at her one day and said, the family's Jewish. And that was the end of it. It was, and of course, this particular cousin and her daughter, they're in the Sunday church. Mm-hmm. And so as much as I invite them to come to stuff, they don't ever come. But, that's just how it is. At this point, I'm the only one that stepped away from the Sunday church and that has stepped into Messianic Judaism. The only one. Just like I was the only one I was the first one that stepped out of Catholicism, right? And went to the Church of God church in the family. So I'm hoping that soon enough they'll come along. But my mother attended Passover recently, not last year, it was the year before. She attended Passover. Yeah. Yes, at my home. And she's a little bit more open, but my sisters have come a long way, because especially one sister that I have, the second to me, she was very, very stubborn and headstrong about it, and the comments and everything else. And but now they will say Shabbat Shalom, or they'll say stuff like Yeshua. They'll use Yeshua, because at first to have mentioned that his name is not Jesus, it's Yeshua, was a huge fight.
I just to interject, I remember very distinctly being in the kitchen with her sister, and I don't know how the discussion came up about, Jesus is not his real name. It's not his original name. His name is Yeshua. And she is stout woman. And she started jumping. And I thought that everything was going to come down in the kitchen. She was jumping. She's saying, that name, Jesus. When I say that name, Jesus, the demons flee. And Jesus. And she was jumping up and down. I said, wow.
I thought my floor was over. I remember literally looking at the floor and going, oh my God, my kitchen floor.
That's why you just had all those renovations done.
She was jumping and pounding her fist in the air. Yes. Oh boy.
Yeah. So now she can send us an email or a note and say, Shabbat Shalom,
yes.
in the name of Yeshua.
Yes. Yes, and she's more open. Part of her being more open to is because her pastor, at a Passover time, he brings a rabbi to their church to talk about Passover.
Okay.
So, yeah, and so every year this rabbi comes and he talks to them, but they don't ever really officially celebrate Passover. So. Who knows what will happen, but I was the one that opened the can of worm. My grandaunt still won't talk about it. We don't know why, but that's just how it is. That's just how it is. Yeah. So that's part of the reason I believe I I think the Holy Spirit just stirred my DNA, stirred something in me, and put a fire in me, and to the point where I said to Carl, this is unbelievable. This is bizarre. This is not normal, and there has to be something in my bloodline. So, yeah. But I do believe that it's a combination of DNA and the working of the Holy Spirit, because there are Jewish people who are not so enthusiastic as in my family, right? Yeah, there are people that are they're just not into it at all, and they just want to run away from it. Don't even mention it to them. Yeah. So I think I really believe that it's more so the Holy Spirit than anything else that is doing that work in me.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting because, my wife has a similar kind of experience where she was, as soon as she came to Canada, growing up in Eastern Europe, she started to get jobs babysitting for Jewish families, and she was always just kind of in there. And after she came to faith, when she was about 27, 28 years old, there was this longing within her heart. Like in the new book that I've just written, I talk about her story where the first year that she was a Christian, she went to a Christmas service, and the pastor said, it's a well-known fact that Jesus wasn't born on December 25th, but it's the day we've chosen. And she's looking around, is like, why are we here? And and so she, now she's on a mission because she wants to find out what the real day is. You don't celebrate someone's birthday on the wrong day. I mean, what kind of foolishness is that?
Yes.
And then, even if she got saved in a seeker-sensitive church, and so they told her, you don't have to worry about the Old Testament, be a good Christian, and she's like, kind of like you, she's like, I'm going back, it starts in Genesis, and she comes across Leviticus 23, and it's just like, whoa, there's a calendar in here. And she went to the pastor and said, we don't have to guess. Look, it's God's right here. She said, why aren't we doing these? And he said, and he just kind of looked at her and was like, it's not for us. That's for the Jewish people. And she kind of said, well, it's in my Bible and God wants me to do it. So I guess I'm going to the Jews. And that really began her journey, where eventually we ended up getting introduced to each other. But when she had the kind of pull to find out maybe there is Jewish blood in me too, and she was even considering a DNA test, because she wouldn't have found that out through anybody in her family. Like, it would have had to have gone back several generations. And she said the Lord told her, don't bother. He said, it doesn't matter what your lineage is. The point is you're adopted. And so we put that to rest. So it's kind of one of those things that's floating out there. Yeah. And I guess we'll never really know until we get to heaven.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how so many people like yourself, I mean, there's something in there. There's something genetic in there. And of course, our DNA is all wrapped up in the spirit realm. I tell people that, why do Jewish people ask a lot of questions? It's because in people's DNA, there are 4 acids. Well, the Jewish people have a 5th acid, and that's the question mark. It's woven right in there. So, the people have a drawing back. And I remember that there was another guy who was a Christian who'd come from Poland, and he had the same experience where, all of a sudden he found out that his family was Jewish. Now in Poland, you understand why. They did all of that. But what's interesting is in Jamaica, correct me if I'm wrong, but the oldest synagogue in North America is there, is it not?
The oldest synagogue is outside of Israel.
But in North America is in Jamaica, isn't it?
Yes. What was it? Yes, the oldest synagogue in North America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the oldest synagogue in North America, the Western Hemisphere, is in Kingston.
Yes.
So there's a real foundation there.
There's actually, Jamaica has a very strong Jewish influence, because I remember growing up, they had the downtown area. Most of the stores, I was told, most of the stores were owned by Jews, either Jews or Chinese. And when a couple of years ago, I found some stuff on YouTube, all these very old cemeteries.
Mm.
And it's all Jewish cemeteries. There's the Star of David on them and so on. So very strong Jewish background history, and especially the area that my family is from, extremely strong Jewish background. So, it's just one of those things that you overlook.
Yeah.
It's just not something um, that is either here or there with you. Growing up, you just don't pay attention to stuff like that. It just didn't make a difference to you. There was nothing significant about it at the time, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay.
Jamaica is really a multicultural, so much as Canada or the USA. It's mostly European descendants of European slave traders as a minority, and then the West African slaves as a majority, and then you have mixture of Chinese and Indian indentured laborers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a vast majority Christian community, Christian population.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody there believes in the God of the Bible, right? So I can see, knowing that history, that anybody who is Jewish would kind of put their ancestry to the side, right? Because we're surrounded by Christians, and you want to be accepted and fit in with everybody. So
yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the kind of ministry you're involved in. Now, you're not officially in vocational ministry per se, but you're about as actively involved as anybody that I know. So tell us a little bit about that. What's God laid upon your heart?
Well, last year we did a 1-week prayer for Israel, and this came about because a few years ago, some years back, there was more than a few years back, there was a war in Israel, and I felt like we should pray for Israel. Again, I had no clue of my background. I just felt the urge that we should pray for Israel. Okay. And so I set up a prayer meeting, and only Sunday church people came to the prayer meeting. No one else, even though I invited people, spoke to people, no one else was available, whatever. But Sunday church people came. And, the minute we started the prayer meeting, it literally felt like a blanket came over us. The presence was just there right away. We started off with a worship song, and we didn't even get into the second line of the first verse before the atmosphere just shifted and just a covering came over us. And after we finished, I had visions in that the prayer meeting. I remember because I didn't even know how to describe it. It was Carl who said to me, that's what you call a bird's eye view. All of a sudden, I felt like I was in this very high place, high up in the air, and zoomed in on a small area, on a place, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm looking at Israel.
Okay.
And then zoomed in closer, I'm looking at Jerusalem. It was a very strange, I'd never experienced anything like that before. And I shared it with Carly. He says that's what you call a bird's eye view. So someone at the meeting said to me, you need to continue this. This is good, and you need to continue this. Well, life happened. What can I say? Life happened. I got married and this and that and all kinds of stuff and challenges and stress, and life changed. And I never did it. And last year I found myself sitting down in the morning, just in his presence, just talking to him. And it was only a few months prior to that he had said something to me in a prayer meeting about me making his business a priority, and that he would make everything that concerns me a priority. And I sat there, and that conversation, that what he said to me came back. And as I was sitting there and multiple images and pictures and recollections, and that particular day having that prayer meeting came back. And I realized he's talking to me, and he's showing me different things, and he's bringing back to my recollection these different things and putting together a picture, a complete picture. And I realized I hadn't been faithful, because here I started something, I stopped, I was advised to continue. His presence was there, almost like he put a seal on it, like an approval on it, because it started. And I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I was crying and I was repenting. And I said, so many times when I should have done things for you that I fell short and I didn't. And now you said this to me a few months ago, and here you are bringing all these things back to me. And I said to him, I said, let me make it up to you. I'm going to offer this on the altar. This is a sacrifice I'm putting on the altar. 7 days of just being on water. And these 7 days we will do prayers only for Israel. Only for Israel, and we would do 4 watches each day, so that would be 28 watches. And we did it. We got a few people involved, and they were faithful enough to join us. And from there, I was invited now to come and pray for Israel on the Prayer Hedges, the platform that does 24 hours 7 days a week prayers for the nations. And I was invited to come and pray for Israel. And so that's where we've been since last year, July. I think we started July of last year. We've been doing that since last year, July, praying for Israel on Prayer Hedges. And then recently, a couple of months ago, was it a couple months ago? Just July, actually, just last month, we had 1 week prayer again for Israel, where he spoke to me again and he said, a cry needs to come up from the earth for Israel. And I said, okay. And so I waited for instructions, and then I said to Carl, this is what we're doing. We're going to have 7 hours of prayer for Israel. Then we're going to do 5 days of prayers for Israel. Then we're going to do another day that's just 7 hours straight of prayers for Israel. And so that's what we've been doing, praying for Israel. We support the Holocaust survivors. We support the orphans in Israel, young ladies that are about to get married, that grew up in an orphanage, and they're about to get married and they need help to get married. I support that and give my offering there so that young girls can get married and don't just leave and go shack up with some guy, but to get married and you have that support. And for girls that are raised in an orphanage, that's so important to have someone step in and to support you, to have mothers step in and to support your marriage. That's really important. Last night we had our monthly prayer meeting for Israel on Prayer Hedges, and our focus was the Holocaust survivors getting emotional healing. And we also prayed for the orphans, those who became orphans because of the war. They lost their parents because of the war, and now they're traumatized and in an orphanage. So we were praying, focusing on emotional healing, and just in general, also just the children and the youth that are struggling with emotional trauma, And then we also prayed about the intergenerational trauma, that trauma that is passed down through the bloodline because of what the Holocaust survivors went through, what has been passed down to their children and their children's children. And then we, spoke blessings over them and made declarations over them, right? We really get into the different areas as to what we should pray for Israel, and realize that it's not just about, oh God, bless Israel and keep Israel from Hamas and protect Israel, amen. That is so much more. There's so many different layers and factors involved. Yeah. And so we get into all of that in prayer. We get other people involved. We try to reach out to as many people as possible and get them to participate and get involved in praying for Israel. And one of the things I've noticed is that I would go somewhere and or I'd be on the line or on Zoom, and they'll say, "Oh well, we have to pray for Israel." Hi, Sister Leonie. I'm beginning to realize more and more that the fact that I am there, it is triggering them to pray for Israel. It's like a cue, you got to pray for Israel. Leonie's here. And so this is good. It's all good. It's all good. And so we're just thankful for that. And Carl can tell you about the street ministry that we're involved in.
Yeah. Just one other thing I wanted to add is that we got the connection with Valley Hedges.
Yeah.
Through Valley Kingdom, through Prayer Hedges,
Valley Kingdom,
through a rabbi in Trinidad.
Yes,
we were online with Rabbi Angus.
Yes.
So he has connections with different churches and groups there in Trinidad, and he's got connected with them. And then he
Yes,
that
connected
opportunity.
us to
Yeah.
to them. Yes,
So-
Rabbi Meir show.
Yeah. So we've also been doing the street ministry here in Hamilton, mostly feeding and evangelizing to the poor, the outcast, the a lot of drug addiction and drug abuse, drug users,
Mental
alcohol,
health.
mental health. A lot of street people here in Hamilton, especially in the downtown area, a wide area of downtown. People come from the surrounding communities like Brantford or smaller areas, smaller cities, and they come here because there's a lot of resources, just like in Toronto. So when I was first saved going to Queensway Cathedral, I started out with a little ministry called Hope Wheels. We used to go downtown to Allen Gardens Park every week, and we would minister to the people there, feed them, talk to them, pray with them. And I did that for quite a while. Leonie has also been involved with street ministry here especially here in Canada for quite a while.
Over 25 years.
So even when we weren't involved in that, we'd always be, looking and helping and talking to people on the street. So even when I came here, before we officially started doing the street ministry, I remember I was doing food delivery and I stopped at a restaurant and a guy came out and said, "Hey, I think you wanted a ride or something like that." And I just go by the leading of the Spirit, and I'm usually trusting in God to say whether I'm going to be harmed or hurt or whatever the case is. So I said, "Okay, jump in."
Okay.
And for a place to stay, and I said, "Well, I'm not going to bring him inside the house." So I said, "Here's what I'll do. You can stay inside my car in the driveway." So that guy, and we know that gentleman up until now. We haven't seen him for a little bit, but we know him
saw
up
him
until
a few
now.
weeks ago.
Saw him a few weeks ago. Yeah, he's still out on the street.
Yeah.
And then there was another gentleman that, as we started doing the street ministry, the Lord pointed him out to Leonie and said, and he was a Somalian guy, and most of the people out there are
Somalian Muslim.
Yeah, are Canadians. So, and like European Canadians. So he said to her, "I want you to go to that man. You're going to be a mother to him."
Woke me up at 5 a.m. to tell me to go to him and showed him to go to him and be a mother to him.
A mother to him. And he, we were ministering to him. He finally got a place, and then we didn't see him for a long time. We saw him one day, and it was a great kind of reunion. And that time he hugged me, he kissed my neck, and I was saying, "Wow, he feels so strongly today," And that was the last time we saw him.
Yeah.
We found out about a week, or maybe not even a week later, that
2 weeks later.
2 weeks later, that he died in his apartment. They said it was a drug overdose, which he never did drugs. He was just an alcoholic.
Right.
So it was as if God knew it was going to happen, and he just wanted Leonie to be a mother to him because he was estranged from his mother from when he was
very young.
Very young.
Yes, had a lot of issues there. And that day when we saw him, we turned onto the road, and he was walking with a friend, and I could tell from the walk, from the body structure, and I said, that's Elias. And car pulled over, and I looked, and I said, "Yeah, that's Elias." And we got out, we gave him hot soup. I remember him sitting down and drinking the soup, and I went over, and I hadn't even thought about it, hadn't planned it, and I just placed my hand on his head, and I started to speak blessings over his life. We've had so many different encounters with him where we held hands and we knelt and we prayed for him, prayed with him, brought him to our home so he could shower when he was banned from using certain facilities because of behavioral disorder. And he was literally stinking. He hadn't showered in days. And Carl went and picked him up, took him to see his probation officer, brought him here. He could shower, and we sat him down to eat. And one day he looked at me and he said, "I always remember the picture of you and Dad," because he called us Mom and Dad. He said, "I always remember the picture of you and Dad, the wedding picture over your dining table. I always remember that picture." That was something that really stood out for him. And I said to him, "You can have that one day." We were truly believing for major turning, a major change for this young man. And he allowed certain people into his apartment that particular night, and these were drug addicts. And so we don't really know what happened.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, passed away. But we continue to do ministry on the street and continue to pray for people and continue to hand out tracts and Bible and hot meals.
Mhm.
A lot of love and a lot of patience.
Yeah, just like myself when I was growing up, and God kept on sending people to me, sending people.
Yes.
Those people were just being obedient to the Spirit or being obedient to the call. And so we want to be obedient to the call in whichever way we can, whether it's, one person in that person's life, just another stop along that person's life, just another call from God in that person's life to pull them back to him. We want to do that. And in terms of Israel, Paul always says to the Jew first and then the Gentile. So our hearts have to be there towards the Jews, because we know, as you know, God is not finished with them yet. They are the point of his redemption, and everybody comes through the Jews and through the head Jew.
The head Jew, that's right.
Well, Carl and Leonie, we've come to the end of our time, and I'm sure we could probably go on for a lot longer. But thank you so much for joining us. I know it was kind of last minute, but I really wanted you to be able to get your story out, because I think it's a fascinating one, and I trust people have been blessed by it. And if you live in Canada and you want a cake, make sure you go to designmediadream.ca, because you will be blessed. Thank you so much, folks. God bless you in all that you do, and thank you for your hearts for Israel.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
It's a
Shalom,
pleasure.
shalom.
Thank you.
Shalom,
Shalom, shalom.
Ever since the fall in the Garden of Eden, mankind has had hatred for one another. However, there is one hatred that is unique in history. Called the oldest hatred in the world, anti-Semitism is the irrational dislike and disdain of the Jewish people. What is the cause of this hatred, and how has that affected society and, most importantly, Christian faith? Starting August 28th, the Besorah Institute presents the history of anti-Semitism. It is an 8-week study on the various examples of, as well as the root causes of anti-Semitism. We will see how anti-Semitism is skewed the way that we interpret the Bible, but we'll also be discussing how we overcome it. Join me, Rabbi Darrell Weinberg of A Light to the Nations Messianic Ministries, Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for this gripping study on the war against God's chosen people. Go to www.besorahinstitute.org for more details and to register. We'll look forward to seeing you then.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.